Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Time of the Writer and to this discussion of the Andre Brink Ingrid Jonker letters published under the title Flame in the Snow and the process of adapting them into a staged reading. Firstly, on behalf of the Centre for Creative Arts and the Time of the Writer Festival, I wish to thank the University of KwaZulu-Natal, the National Department of Arts and Culture, the KZN Department of Arts and Culture, the French Institute of South Africa, the STAND Foundation, the Foundation for Human Rights, and the National Institute for the Humanities and Social Sciences, along with the media partner Mpilo, Journal for African Writing, and the festival's technical partner, Hear My Voice. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, I'd like very much to introduce the panel, Mpilo Straw Nzimande, Cara Roberts, and Bryan Hiles. Mpilo Straw hails from Pietermaritzburg, where he was schooled and then attended university. He moved to Durban in 2014, having been cast in the lead role in an adult panto called Cinderfella. He has made a name for himself performing Woza Albert, Mob Feel, Tall Tales for Big People, garnering Standard Bank Ovation Awards for all three of these at the National Arts Festival. He has performed several of the iconic Andrew Buckland scripts and has recently joined the Think Theatre Company, performing Shakespeare's Hamlet, Othello, and Macbeth. He fell in love with the story of Brink and Jonker when Cara introduced him to the book. Welcome, Mpilo Straw. Cara Roberts grew up in Johannesburg and moved to Durban in 2019. She is a vibrant and talented performer who has worked with Kickstart, the Think Theatre Company, and Theatre Smiths, who created The King of Broken Things, a one-hander in which she performed. The piece won the 2020 Standard Bank Gold Ovation Award. She has had a lifelong fascination with Ingrid Jonker and seized on the opportunity to work with the letters in a theatrical sense. Bryan is one of Durban's most versatile actors and has stretched his skills in a variety of styles since his introduction into theatre in 1996 with the Story Spinning Theatre of Cape Town. He studied drama at Technikon Natal, now DUT, and paid his way while studying through clowning, face painting, juggling, and balloon sculpting. He moved to Johannesburg briefly after his studies, working in educational theatre, music review, and television. He has garnered numerous awards for the work he has done in Durban, most especially for the varied and exciting roles he has played for the Kickstart Theatre Company. Many famous works of literature have been adapted for the stage, screen, and television. The list is extensive. Most interestingly, KwaZulu-Natal has, in recent years, been active in this field. John van der Reit's Spud novels, written in diary form, were converted into a movie. And the much-revered Alan Paton's life story was brought to life as a play called A Voice I Cannot Silence. It was based on Paton's poetry, novels, biographies, and autobiography. What is most interesting here is that you three have taken letters rather than a novel or a biography, rather than using any of the other works written by the protagonists in the story. Personal, intimate letters, never intended for publishing, adapted as a staged reading. Flame in the Snow is an intense love story, told via the letters written by two South African literary giants, Ingrid Jonker and Andre Brink, over a period of 2 years. As the reader, viewer, and especially as a South African, one knows from the outset that this affair will not end happily ever after. Even the title suggests this. It is important for the reader or the person watching a staged reading to be able to set these letters and characters in context. They first met and wrote to each other in April 1963. Please would you play the first video clip?
Grahamstown, April 1963. Delightful little creature. I needed some neutral in transit days between the Cape and being back again, just to make the transition more gradual. After the week, and especially those 3 days of change, I feel very averse to enduring all over again that old threat of settled, safe bourgeois life. But I must constantly resist this opiate precisely because it would be so easy just to let it take me. During the week in the Cape, you at least provided me with something of an antidote. Should I politely say, thank you? That would make it too banal, especially our night. Poetry can communicate before it is understood. Also applies in a certain sense to people who come together freely through sex. It is precisely an act of communion that, thank God, remains beyond words. A scent, memories of your hands, hair and breasts, your voice, tears, cynicism, game playing, red wine, 2 double brandies, eyes, mocking, saying no, cursing, showing contempt, playing with me, saying yes, sweet and happy, or the Helen and Huffy. All of this gets one nowhere. Luckily, however, these things are just starting points. Is the body itself capable of remembering? I think its recollection is better than unreliable memory. My body remembers yours, and it's not because of those few strategic little pains or the mark on my shoulder. Also not, I hope, because I've now become part of your sorrow. It's more positive. I'm actually just busy saying in a roundabout way what I've already said. Thank you. I saw Rob this morning. He referred to your poems in 60. He says he's very taken with them. You told me you don't care much what critics say, but maybe this will warm your heart a little. You've been through enough wintry things as it is. I know we relate as free individuals and don't commit each other to any bonds, but I do wish I could be with you and help a bit. Not only to find a place to share everyday's finicky little tasks with you, but maybe also to save you from the thought that the cure for loneliness is solitude. Please, for God's sake, Ingrid, don't do what you wanted to do in Jan's house. And allow me to do anything I possibly can to help, in whatever way. And write for us a poem about the memory of evening is like an apple. Find a way to relate it to Adam and Eve's apple. When you are done, eat the apple, and then ask, what now? You will know how. I am not a poet. With love, Andre.
Cape Town, May 1963. My dear Andre, I started writing to you on Sunday, but after 5 interruptions I gave up and went for a walk up the mountain. Then an ice-cold swim at Clifton, a warm bed and a drink. I want to thank you again for your lovely letter, so open and honest and innocent. I'm glad you'll soon be coming to Cape Town again. You must see my beautiful flat with garden in Greenpoint. Such a cozy and intimate little home. Everything's still good, or same as usual. My friends still make me bitterly angry. And then I miss your calm protection. Right now I'm writing from God-forsaken Citadel Press, which dulls my imagination. I'll write more from home tonight. I remember some of your questions. Whether a body can remember. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in our philosophy. No, Andre. I would really like to see you one more time before screaming and cursing I leave this life. Just after you left, I heard from reliable sources that my former, always sounds like deceased, husband has no intention at all of returning Nzimande to me. I received a highly upsetting letter. I wrote back to him immediately, no answer. And, just now, a registered letter in which I demand Nzimande back. I haven't written a single word in the past 2 weeks with all these things. I went to sleep with Nzimande's teddy bear last night. It's so wonderfully warm and woolly and as yellow as a Bantry Bay summer. Right soon, you hear, love, Godspeed, gratitude, Ingrid. Kind of provided an escape for her. I'll speak
Thank you,
for
Cara. Mpilo Straw.
Yes. I can only view this from Andre's perspective, and from what I took from his life is that at the time he was in a marriage, and he had this new thing that he had gotten himself into, which is a relationship with Ingrid Jonker. So from the beginning letter, which just played now, you can see or sense that he is happy, and there's some sort of excitement in him because now there's a difference in his life. There's something new. So he kind of delved into that world, and that's where it initially starts off, and it carries on with him being invested in this new thing, which is different from the monotonous marriage at home, coming home with the son and everything. So yeah, that's where I see Andre at the time.
And Bryan is the director?
Yes, so we're dealing with two of South Africa's greatest literary, as you said, giants. And they were part of a writing fraternity called the Sestigers. They were writing in the 1960s. And essentially what they were doing, it was an Afrikaans writing fraternity, and included members such as Barto Smit, Brayton Breitenbach, and, well, I think we know several major Afrikaans writers from that time. What they were doing essentially was trying to break the boundaries of the Afrikaans writing style. And in doing so, they were not only breaking political boundaries, but that was a big theme because of the political context they were writing in. They were also breaking moral boundaries. They were just questioning the style that Afrikaans writing had been. They essentially wanted Afrikaans to be engaged with literary movements across the world so that they could stand up to the literary movements that the rest of the world were exploring. And I think what we find particularly in this book, the letters between two of those people, they're pushing the boundaries in their writing, but in so doing, they're also pushing their own personal boundaries. Here we have a man who is married and he has a son, and a woman who is separated, then divorced, but has a daughter, is also seeing somebody else. She has a partner. The two of them come together in this intense affair, pushing their own personal boundaries in their own relationships, in their writing, in their emotions. And I think that was what is so wonderful and important and a lovely thing for us to tackle when performing this, was having a look at where they come from and how they're extending themselves in all manner of directions.
Thank you. Well, I think that sort of set the scene very well. Let's move on to look more closely at the incredible intensity of this relationship. Please, can you play the second clip?
My darling little thing. Dare I think about the fact that, and in what way, I was still with you yesterday afternoon this time? Although I have proof enough, it makes no difference to the ache of longing. The drive yesterday afternoon wasn't too bad. I was full of your presence, and I couldn't really believe I was on my way. The fact only hit me very suddenly when I arrived in Albertina last night at 8 and discovered I was the only guest in the hotel. There was only one solution. Switch off the lights at 9 and go to sleep. Didn't even take a bath, as I was reluctant to rid myself of your secrets. I don't yet want to begin processing our week together. I just want to feel completely happy, irrational with everything still unsorted in my subconscious. Words, sensory impressions, the look in your eyes, the movement of your delightful little body, your voice, promises, little games, tears, and all manner of secrets. This much I've never had.
Lovely chat last night about your ice cream and my red bikini. Hello, child. What do you think of my application to get a bursary overseas? I've never had a single opportunity. I only want a few months or a year to go and to do or think or see something worthwhile, to feed this impoverishment with good art, a more natural life. And if there's nothing that I must have and can't get, I see no point in going on. I reckon I've tried long enough now, Andre. Without love, without an education, without any form of emotional security. I'm not self-pitying, also not bitter, just tired. They are ongoing, these things, threatening to take away the little light, talent that was granted to me, because it can indeed be taken away. Every grey day is deadening. And after this tirade, I want to show you how your love carries me through these things. Do you know how I show it? Perhaps just the fact that I'm still alive. Love, beautiful, mousy, naked man, cocoon.
Today I'm really writing no more than a rushed little note, because you should at least get a letter on your 29th birthday. And now, child of mine, I wish you a very happy birthday, full of joy. Be assured of the serenity of my love, the whole day long and always, while you are doing your grey work, during lunch, in the jam-packed bus, and finally in the little castle. When you go to sleep with me, lie still and close your eyes and listen and feel, knowing that and how I hail every part of you with love, earnestness, and play, and how when I am done with my greetings, I open you up softly and penetrate you very deeply and stay there and come and leave you with secrets and tenderness and wonder and a generous laugh of joy. Then I kiss your lovely eyes and you fall asleep, and the two of us are mystifyingly happy. With love, your Andre. And then, listen, child, listen. Then a young girl arrived in Jan's living room, carrying with her the scent of paint and food. She was small. Everything about her was small. Her hair was long, light-colored. She was wearing a bright yellow blouse and green slacks, with beautiful feet and gold sandals. She had soft, neglected hands, one of them coolly enveloped in my own for just a second, and a nonchalant voice, and questioning, lovely, slightly displeased eyes, and a very prominent little mound. We supposedly read a letter together at the table, and we began talking about poems. I was offered a glass of milk to calm me down. I lay awake all night long, thinking. The next night, she was sleeping alongside me. One night later, she slept with me. God, my little girl, I'm mad with love and soothed. I beseech you to be happy and quiet and patient. I am coming, a groom to a girl with the lamp that runneth over with oil. Love and happiness.
Darling, my Andre, today's reading is Lord, search my heart. While I love you, Andre, and would accept you with joy if you managed to come back to me, it would be a fiasco if I came to Grahamstown. It would mean the end of your marriage, because then Estelle would definitely not stay with you. Also, it would encourage Piet to go ahead with his plan, which might then also have the same consequences if it becomes public. The bald facts, which we both know so well, but which we try to skirt around. Of course, I am still attached to Jack, but in a destructive way. On Saturday night, I had such a fight with him again that I had to take some pills and fell asleep with a burning cigarette in my hand. Irresponsible. It's all so difficult and complicated, and one must, of course, do the right thing and choose correctly in order to live in peace. I would that we could just have a chance, just 6 months or a year, to live together, even if it's just to get to know one another better. But on the other hand, no one could know you better than I know you.
Ingrid, you who slept in the crook of my arm, you who at times were mine only, you who read poetry in that lovely voice of yours, who could laugh so sweetly, so wickedly, you of the morning sun, of the luminous dark, the conversation of our bodies, the fulfillment always, so bright, so dark, so true to me in such a little hall. You who console me, drive me crazy.
My dearest Andre, how are you? Dearest man, I feel so guilty that I haven't written again, but it's been a continual bobbing around on the open sea. My heart is still hammering from the heart of London. I no longer know whether I can say you because you are so far away. Sometimes I feel rebellious towards you because you are so far. Child, went out for dinner last night to a madhouse where they sang old English songs. Why must old people always be so ridiculous? But you, my South Africa, if I could just have held your hand and squeezed it under that funny old table and laughed. What are you doing? Thank you for your last boat letter. So unexpected, my precious. One lives in a kind of vacuum without news, and yet I know how you are. And sometimes I feel so concerned about you out there on the godforsaken fluctus of Grahamstown. And how are things with you and Estelle? And the little one? And the writing? And the soul? And the heart?
God, my darling, how does one wait another 6 weeks? But we shall light up our little flame of chastity and bathe in its glow. And then our play dream of earlier will become true as I take your little hand in mine and walk with you through the streets of Paris. We will drink at the sidewalk tables, sit at the shade of the gardens, roam along the Seine and through the Notre Dame, and return to our room, Messieurs et Mesdames, and fuck ourselves half stupid. Beloved one, lovely you, write everything about everyone you meet. Sleep with me. I'm sleeping with you a lot. A last little kiss for the little clip between the lips of your purse.
My dearest Andre, let me count your mussies again. Let me hold you in my arms again, heavy and tired, like in Paris that first night. My little lamb, I have no news and no words. I miss your body and your entire death and your youth beyond words.
Sure, it's powerful stuff. One of your most important processes you mentioned in our previous discussions was to capture the essence of their characters and the intense development of this affair. This shines through so much in the language used in their letters, personal letters written poetically. What can you tell us about their characters and their affair? Starting again with you, Cara.
Okay, what I can say about the characters, I'll speak on Ingrid's behalf for Ingrid, is I think her intensity comes through in her letters, especially for me personally, it's a constant thing, but it's an intensity. She's intensely honest. She's intensely vulnerable and open about it. And her letters are more direct and more factual, especially in the beginning, compared to Andre's letters. And that to me just amplifies the intense love, simplicity, and safety that I think Ingrid was looking for. She also has an intense need to constantly be creative, to seek it out, to travel, to feel something new. And it's right through the whole of Flame in the Snow, even towards the end, where she's intensely searching for Andre to write back or to give more detail. And, you know, she's constantly looking for ways to improve her situation, to improve the world around her, to improve her work. And yeah, you can see that in their relationship as well. Although she may be not really there because she's dealing with her depression, she still tries, she still reaches out, she's still honest with him, even if she's been missing. And she constantly apologizes for her, you know, her taking long to get back to him, or for her silences. And she asks for his forgiveness for him, his impulsiveness. And that to me is an intensity that I loved following through the climax, you know, what you could call the climax of their relationship, right down to when the demise sort of begins and the crumbling starts to begin. The intensity just shifts between them. And that is just so interesting for me.
Thanks, Cara. And Mpilo Straw speaking for Mr. Brink.
Yes. From what I picked up, Andre's side wasn't that much of an intense relationship. To him, it was more of a sexual desire, because it speaks a lot about the sexual encounters, the intimacy, and that's what he basically wants the most, from what I read from the text. And throughout, from the beginning till probably 3/4 of the way, you can pick it up that most of what he says is very sexual. As I said in the first answer, when I answered the first question, that to him, it seemed like he was a child who has this new thing that he's doing. So it's fun than it being a relationship. But he does say that he has some sort of feeling for her. But can we prove that it is a genuine feeling? Because as it plays out, he doesn't show any genuineness. So that's where I feel like Andre was just more excited about what was happening at the time, and not to say a relationship.
Thank you, Mpilo Straw. And Bryan.
Yeah, what I find interesting is Andre is the prose writer, he's the novel writer, whereas Ingrid is the poet. But when reading their letters to each other, Andre's letters are much longer. He'll write pages and pages of poetic writing, whereas reading Ingrid's letters, they come across very matter of fact, very honest, very much, I'm writing to you about my life, I want to know about your life on a personal level. It feels as though, I'm obviously speaking from my own perception, but it feels as though her investment in this relationship is a real investment. I know they both have their issues. She is busy. She is seeing somebody else. Her partner is Jack Cope. He is married. They do speak about their respective other partners. But when I read Andre's letters, it feels like he's writing so much, and so much is descriptive in order to just keep hooking in this relationship, to keep hooking in this affair that he's enjoying. And I think I'm agreeing with you, Straw, in what you've said. It feels to me that he's constantly hooking her in, whereas Ingrid is being honest. And I think when that breaks down, it's quite clear when he stops writing to her as much, there's no need for hooking her in anymore.
Exactly, yeah. Thank you, Bryan. I think we need to move on. So can we look at the third video clip, please?
I meet every revelation with a memory. The only thing that matters is being together. Write soon about what's happening with your overseas visit, Andre. Time is short. I've written nothing yet, but things are already starting to happen. After visiting the gallery today, even the plainest old lady on the tube looked fresh and full of meaning. Know that I'm thinking of you, and stay pure and clean and good, and love me, and forgive my silences and impulsiveness, and come here, my little flame in the snow.
Right. I wonder now if we can get onto the process you took, because we've got a book full of letters and then we've got a staged reading. Can you tell us about the process you chose to rehearse? Remembering that what the subject matter was intended to remain forever private, and yet you brought them to life for other people, in inverted commas, to read. And I think we're going to kick off with Cara yet again.
I'm happy to, Sue. I will start, well, at the beginning of the process, I'll speak about that. As a child, my mom constantly, Ingrid Jonker's work were my lullabies. And so I've always felt her presence in a part of my life and looked out for her poetry and really admired her and wondered about her life. I was obviously also aware of the author, Andre Brink. And when I heard that this book called Flame in the Snow was being published, I was coming out of a very toxic relationship, and I'd read kind of bits of what it's going to be about. And letters are one of my favorite things in the world. And so is Ingrid Jonker. And I couldn't wait. And this book, I waited for 2 years, and I eventually got gifted the book. And I think I read it 5 times and cried every single time, because the story is it happens everywhere, and you know what's going to happen, and you try and find answers, or where could I stop this, or it just constantly drew me in again and again. And I thought I would love to just read these letters on stage. Obviously then I looked into rights and all of that, and I wouldn't have been able to afford it in dollars or rands. So I just, on an off chance, emailed Penguin Random House, and I thought I wouldn't get a response. And about a week later, a woman from there said, I'm the wrong person to ask, but here's Mr. Fourie Botha's email address. So I just said, hello, Mr. Botha, I would really love to do this, but I can't afford any of the rights. And I, just closed my laptop and forgot about it. And then about 3 days later, this response came, and Mr. Botha said, Cara, due to the current circumstances, COVID, I'm prepared to waive any fees for 3 staged readings. And I was so excited, and then got into the whole thing, just jumped in and started cutting this big baby into 37 letters, I think, which was heartbreaking, but very meaty. So Mr. Botha, if you are watching this, before I pass on to the next person, thank you. And to the brilliant translators of this work, because I was, of course, working from the English translation of Flame in the Snow.
That's a very interesting beginning of a process there, Cara. Straw, you were drawn into this somewhat later along that line, once the situation of the rights had been resolved. So what was your process?
Well, the process for me was a bit different from Cara's, because I hadn't read the book, or I didn't know anything about the encounter. I'd heard about Andre Brink and Ingrid Jonker as writers, but I had not delved into the world. And so Cara approached me when lockdown began, and she said, no, are you interested in doing this production? And I said, of course, yes, I'm interested, it's an honor. I want to work with you, I wouldn't mind. But then when she told me what we were doing, that's when I went back home and I started doing my research. And to discover this whole story, what happened. And so for me, I then started getting to grips with everything. And I discovered that I'm a Black person having to play this white Afrikaans man. So I had a bit of anxiety. I had to go back to Cara and the director and ask them, like, are you sure about this? Are you sure I'm the right person to play this? But they were very adamant at the time. I remember speaking to Bryan, the director, and he said to me, no, just relax. It's a reading. We don't want you to be Andre Brink. We just want you to read Andre Brink's letters, and we want you to translate the emotion, not physically, but internally. So it was quite a challenge for me, because I remember Cara as well. a week into the process, she kept on telling me that you are the perfect person for the job. We chose you because we believe in you. And so after them saying this to me, we then sat down and started reading the text and just getting to know the two people. I don't want to say characters, but getting to know both the writers in depth. And so we ended up getting to a realization that this could happen to anyone. It's universal. It's probably happening right now elsewhere in a different context. So it does not matter who reads the letters, because all I did was just read the letters. I wasn't being Andre. I just translated his emotion, and I felt his emotion. So I felt that it was quite a process that gave me growth as an actor, because I got to learn about this whole story, and I had a new challenge whereby I had to read on stage instead of playing a character. So thank you.
Thank you. And then Bryan, as the director, what about your process pulling these two dynamic and quite violent characters together?
Well, I think what Cara and Straw have said have pretty much summed it up. It was a sense of, we did get a few questions, as you know. Andre is an Afrikaans white man. Yeah. So the racial issue certainly was prominent from the outset. But like Straw was saying, we're not being Andre Brink and Ingrid Jonker. We can't be them. But we are honoring the relationship, because essentially what this is, it's a love story. That's what this book is. It's a love story. Yes, we know the two people, they are real people, but it's a beautiful love story told from start to finish with a tragic end. And so that was what was important for us, was the content, the fact that this relationship is so intense and well worth delving into. And then the process itself of trying to find the right letters to read, to portray that journey in its essence, that was no mean feat, because this book is quite big. And Cara did a great job in finding, sort of paring it down to what she could. And then it just took sessions of us sitting and reading and reading and reading and reading and finding, okay, maybe that letter doesn't help the journey, so we can get rid of that, and reading and reading and reading. And then when we found a product, we went and sat with some friends and read more and got feedback from friends saying, where are we keeping you with this journey and where are we losing you? To try and pare it down to something that was an hour long, something that you could sit through, but you don't lose the essence of that relationship. I think that was the biggest challenge, was paring it down, but maintaining that relationship.
Yeah. It must have been a mammoth task looking at the size of the book. Let's move on. The next clip contains a poem by Jonker, which was written specifically for Brink and remained unpublished for many, many years. Please play the fourth clip.
I'm working hard on our novella. The title, I think, Orgy. I want to allow everything to dissolve in this work. Your childhood in a world of sand and sea. And of course, the two of us all pulled together in one night of New Year's celebration. A fertility feast. You've probably also seen the vicious reviews of Orgy. Funny. A while ago, this kind of thing would have upset me enormously. Now, not at all. A smile at most.
Amsterdam, June 1964. Waiting in Amsterdam. I can only say that I waited for you through western nights, at tram stops, in lanes, by canals, and the Tower of Tears. You came through the forlorn cities of Europe. I recognized you. I prepared the table, with wine, with bread, with grace. But unperturbed, you turned your back and took off your cock, laid it on the table, and without a word, with your own smile, forsook the world. Ingrid Jonker.
Thank you. Now, if you happen to be in Durban on the 28th of March, you can actually catch a performance of Flame in the Snow at a venue called Altitude in Greyville. The booking is through Quicket, and the starting time is 4:30 in the afternoon. It's a Sunday. The book is for sale from all leading bookstores in the country and online. Now that you three have become so involved in the story of Andre and Ingrid, can you give our audience, briefly, I'm going to ask each of you to give a reason, can you give us some powerful reasons to read Flame in the Snow? And I'm going to ask Bryan to kick off.
I think it's quite simple, really, because even if you ignore the fact that we know who these two people are and they are prolific writers, this book, this relationship, it is written almost like a Shakespearean tragedy. It builds, the relationship builds, it reaches a climax, and we can see the demise happening, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. You know it's going to happen, but it's going to happen regardless. And the fact that they are beautiful writers means that this relationship, this story, this beautiful sort of intense build to a climax and then break down to a demise is, I don't know where I was going with that, is beautifully written. That's where I was going with that.
Thank you, Bryan. It's a bit like reading a romance. It's also a thriller.
That's
Cara.
true.
Yes.
Thanks. Cara.
Okay, well, first of all, this is the best book in the world, in my opinion, one of them, definitely. And my reasons for that would be because, yes, it's beautifully written, and it will stick, I hope, in other people's hearts. It's never left my heart, and it has stuck with me for a long time, and I think it will always continue to do so because it's timeless in its own sense. And also because it's an incredibly intimate insight into, Andre speaks about a lot of the work that he was writing in those 2 years, and so does Ingrid. And it's an insight into where they were when you read, for example, Orgy or The Ambassadeur, these books, where Andre and Ingrid's minds were when these works were being created. It's a great kind of backstage look, if I can. Yeah.
Thank you. And Mpilo Straw, why must we buy the book?
Yes, I suggest that everyone goes and gets the book. It'll change your life, guys. Simply because it's just a beautiful story which wasn't written by one person. It's written by two writers who wrote letters, and these are letters of an emotional journey that I'd love for everyone to experience. Because when you read this book, it will take you on an emotional journey. It will work your imagination, because you will start imagining what was happening and where they were and what was going through their heads. And at the end, after reading it, you get to a point where you ask yourself questions. So it's very thought-provoking. And I believe that when something is thought-provoking, it's great. You sit there and you ask yourself, what if this happened? What if Andre did this? What if Ingrid made a different decision? So I really advise people to read the book or come and watch the show so you can.
Thank you, Mpilo Straw. Thanks. Now, as I said earlier, we all know that this story did not end happily ever after. This is not a spoiler alert. We know already that that is the case. So please, can you play the next clip?
Please, for God's sake, Ingrid, don't do what you wanted to do in Jan's house. And allow me to do anything I possibly can to help, in whatever way.
I am afraid. You're probably just as scared. Your dream about you and Jack is quite realistic, especially if you take into consideration that I've now applied for a .22 revolver and the darkness. Maybe I'll never use it because of Simone and you and Jack. I want to write a story about something I've dreamt. I dreamt I'm in love with a beautiful horse with a red mane. But at the end of the dream, I discover he's married to another girl. He tosses his mane around, and the little brown girl in the white dress leads him away. How was Johannesburg? Did you go and visit my rival? In your letter, you said you were going to stay with them. They have a swimming pool, don't they? Now I'm going to go and walk by the sea, and I'll think of a face, a beloved face, your face.
Ingrid committed suicide a few brief months after Brink ended the relationship. Can we look briefly at her mental health, either being bolstered by Brink or undermined by him throughout the relationship? Cara.
Well, yes. Okay, so her mental health, just before she met Andre, she'd just been released from a psychiatric hospital. I think it was called Falkenberg. That was before they'd even met. And like I said earlier about Ingrid's vulnerability and her honesty, she is constantly throughout the book honest with Brink about the tensions with her father, who is head of the NP, the fact that she can't always get Simone or get her well looked after, and the fact that she's working in a place that is soul destroying, and that she suffers from anxiety and depression. And these are things that she has always, throughout the book, mentioned to him. And in my opinion, her honesty was undermined by Brink. That's my opinion. But also towards the end of the book, you have to see how she goes almost into like a prophetic. She talks about her dreams and about these things. And it's almost as if, I'm not blaming Brink for her suicide at all, but I'm saying the undermining of her honesty and plea for help was definitely a catalyst. In my opinion, I think that Ingrid had made her mind up a while ago before Brink's last letter.
And Mpilo, what do you think?
Well, on my side, I have mixed emotions when it comes to this, because on the one hand, I do not feel like Andre bolstered, as in caused for this to happen, was the cause. But at the same time, I can say that there was some sort of undermining or not noticing what was going on, because she says it all the time, even from the beginning. She even tried to commit suicide prior to this. So when they got into this relationship, they already knew what they were getting into. I mean, and that's how I viewed it, in a sense that they're both adults. They both have relationships outside of this relationship. And Andre happens to be in a bit of a better situation than Ingrid, because Ingrid is alone and she's with her child. And so because of circumstance, I believe with circumstance, it ends up being this way, because she does say that she's applied for a .22 revolver. She's in the darkness. She's going to walk out at the sea. All these dreams that she's having. She tells Andre, but Andre, in a way, does not even speak about it. He doesn't even ask, why do you want to get this, or why are you feeling like this? So I will say that he did ignore or undermine this Ingrid's mental issue, but I don't want to blame him for the death. Yeah, that's all I can say about it.
Bryan, have you got the casting vote here as the director?
I do. I think Andre's position is one of somewhat ignorance. I mean, I think if you're a person who doesn't understand mental health issues and depression and anxiety, you might brush it off as a phase or something that is not too serious. So constantly, his reaction seems to be quite superficial. He will ask her occasionally, how are you feeling? Do you feel okay? How are all the bits that I saw? Or another big thing for him was he was earning a salary, and he would constantly send little checks, a little bit of money here, because it feels like money will make you feel better, Shame, because you're struggling. You're struggling to make ends meet, so I'll send you a bit of money, rather than really getting into what the issue is.
Yeah.
Another problem I think we find is that Andre in himself appears quite selfish. He talks about his novel Orgy, which was somewhat inspired by Ingrid and almost part written by her. So almost because they had spoken about it.
Sorry, and he'd also send off bits that she was to
That's
read.
right.
And yeah.
So in the beginning, when he's talking about Orgy, it's their novel, their book. But when toward the end of the book here, when he speaks about Orgy and the reviewing of Orgy, suddenly it's his book, and she's not part of that. And I think a lot of that will push somebody just a little bit further and further and further over the edge.
Indeed. Okay. Thank you. We're going to have to start wrapping up because time is running out. We will have a Q&A after the final video clip is shown, if there is time. Please would you indicate on your own chat options or by raising your hand should you wish to speak. Right, this affair happened in the 60s and in essence, a personal story rather than a comment on the South African politics of the time. It is nevertheless really interesting that Madiba chose a Jonker poem to recite as his part of the inauguration. Please would you play the final clip?
In the dark days, when all seemed hopeless in our country, when many refused to hear her resonant voice, she took her own life. She was both an Afrikaner and an African. Her name is Ingrid Jonker. She wrote, and I quote, "The child is not dead. The child lifts his fist against his mother, who shouts Africa. The child is not dead, not at Langa, nor at Nyanga, nor at Orlando, nor at Sharpeville, nor at the police post at Philippi, where he lies with a bullet through his brain. The child who only wanted to play in the sun at Nyanga is everywhere. The child, grown to a man, tracks on through all Africa. The child, grown to a giant, journeys over the whole world without a pause.
Wat Afrika skreeu die geur van vryheid en heide in die lokasies van die omsingelde hart. Die kind lig sy vuiste teen sy vader in die optog van die generasies. Wat Afrika skreeu die geur van geregtigheid en bloed in die strate van sy gewapende trots. Die kind is nie dood nie, nog by Langa, nog by Nyanga, nog by Orlando, nog by Sharpeville, nog by die polisiestasie in Philippi, waar hy lê met 'n koel deur sy kop. Die kind is die skaduwee van die soldate, op wag met gewere, sarasene en knuppels. Die kind is teenwoordig by alle vergaderings en wetgewings. Die kind loer deur die vensters van huise en in die harte van moeders. Die kind wat net wil speel in die son by Nyanga's oorlog. Die kind wat 'n man geword het, trek deur die ganse Afrika. Die kind wat 'n reus geword het, reis deur die hele wêreld. sonder 'n pas.
Are there any questions? Nope. Okay, there don't appear to be any questions, but I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to thank Hear My Voice for the amazing technicals, and Ishmael Mohammed and the Center for Creative Arts for giving such a wonderful opportunity to Flame in the Snow. Thank you very much indeed for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.